You are listening to Peak One Sports.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Leadoff. Heard Saturdays on the Peak One Sports Network. I'm Ashton, sitting with Tony and Landen to get you ready for your sports weekend for the final time in 2023. I like that pause. Just gotta say the final time and draw it
What
out.
a memorable year it's been. Gosh.
The first year of this show, the first year of this network. Not even a full year. Really, we started in March.
So then we can say that we're the reason the Rangers turned it around and won the World Series.
I mean, we can say that. I don't know if other people would say that. We can say that, though. So far, we're 1-for-1. We say the Cowboys, Mavs, and Stars are all doing pretty good as well. Until one of those teams loses, we're pretty good. But guys, let's just keep this streak running. Kind of like Colorado football vibes, where we talked about them every week. We're going to talk about the Detroit Pistons again because their streak continues. After losing in overtime to the Celtics on Thursday, the Pistons have now lost 28 straight games, tying the all-time record. Now, they have the record for most losses in one NBA season without it overlapping.
All-time.
All-time. Right now, they're tied with the 76ers of 2014, 2015, or really, so 2013, 2014, 76ers, and 2014, 2015, where they lost 28 straight games. Over the end to the beginning of the next season. And they play tonight they host the Toronto Raptors, so it could happen tonight. And we could possibly next year start off the year in our show talking about the Pistons losing streak, which would be, if they kept losing, it'd be about 32 games, if I'm looking at the schedule correctly. So right now, their last win came on October 30th, before Halloween, and right now we're talking about Halloween, the end of the year. If they don't win tonight, they'll start 2024 off with a 29-game losing streak. Again, I said they host Toronto tonight. There are a couple of opportunities to end the streak. They play Monday at Houston, although Houston's been kind of playing well the last few games. And then Wednesday, they go to Utah to play the Jazz. And who knows? The Jazz aren't a great team, but they're stringing together some wins.
Yeah.
All-time
I didn't expect
worst team
this basketball season to be talking much about the Detroit Pistons. They're giving us something to talk about.
If you told me that a team was going to lose this many games, I would have guessed it was Utah. Just looking at their roster, because they have almost nobody. They've traded away everybody the last couple of years. Detroit, I thought, was rising on the up and up, but apparently not. I don't know what's happening in Detroit right now. Maybe the Lions are taking every ounce of positive sports vibes they have just to keep winning, which we'll talk about the Lions here in a little bit. But be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Comment down below. Hit the like button if you like us. Hit it twice if you don't. This episode is brought to you by Betalytics. Be sure to not bet with your gut. Use Betalytics and their AI algorithms. And use promo code PEAK1 for 25% off when you sign up today. We're also brought to you by Shank It Golf. If you're not the country club type, but you love to play golf, golf is fun. We should dress like it. You can go click the link below and use promo code PEAK1 for 15% off your order today. Now we're going to get started off talking football because the Denver Broncos have benched Mr. Unlimited and are expected to cut Russell Wilson probably at the end of the year. Like how 360, I know he had a bad year last year, but I thought they were doing something this year. They seemed pretty good, and then they lose a couple straight.
Well, we all saw the Sean Payton ripping Russell Wilson a new one a couple weeks ago. And it's just something you don't see in professional sports, really. I mean, in any sport, you just don't see a manager or a head coach ripping, especially their star quarterback.
Yeah.
And that was a little, it seems out of character for most teams. And you wonder how dysfunctional is that Broncos
It seems
team,
like a first.
and not just the team, but the whole organization. I mean, the way they even did Russell Wilson this way is to, they're pretty much threatening him that he's being benched if he doesn't take this, like, what was it, restructuring his injury clause in his contract. And they told him this weeks ago.
Which has got to be why they're benching him and possibly cutting him. Next year, they're on the hook for $39 million for Russell Wilson. But 2025, he has an injury guarantee for $37 million. So if you, like you mentioned, they're trying to get him to restructure, he's not going to, and Russell Wilson's not going to be your quarterback moving forward, why play him?
Yeah.
There's nothing guaranteed in his contract about playing him. It's just if you get hurt, we'll guarantee you still get paid.
But do they really have a backup plan?
Well, I mean, if you're going to move forward, I mean, I think Russell Wilson's still a pretty good quarterback. If Russell Wilson can't do anything with this team right now, you're not doing anything next year.
Yeah.
I don't think. So go ahead, blow through, call it a loss, whatever. You're on the hook for his money next year. But you don't want to still be tied to him after that, possibly 2 years after you cut him or move on from him. Russell Wilson did post on social media the other day, God's got me, looking forward to what's next. So he pretty much understands that he's probably not playing for Denver anymore.
I just think the way that this organization handled this publicly and to threaten benching him, I mean, their season's over, right? I mean, I haven't kept up with the Broncos enough to know
There's
if
a
they
little
even have
hope
a shot.
where
But
I saw one. I mean, it wasn't a
like,
big
what does
media
benching
source,
him do for you the last 2 weeks of the season?
You get a better draft pick. I think right now they're in a prime quarterback spot to
Well,
draft.
last year last week they were thinking playoffs. I saw people predicting, nobody reputable, but people predicting that the Broncos might make a deep run in the playoffs. And now we're done, but just because you have a chance to make the playoffs doesn't mean, from a organizational standpoint, that you're just going all in right now, because obviously the team's not prepared to win a Super Bowl. By the time they do, I don't think Russell Wilson's going to be any kind of shell of a form of what he still is now. All the money, you just don't want to be held back. And we've seen, with the Texans, with the Browns, that you can flip this in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Where they have a young team, they have some potential superstars that in 2 years, it's very much possible, especially with Sean Payton running the helm, that you could be maybe an outside contender. And again, you don't want that nearly $40 million on your cap for somebody because you thought there's an outside chance to make the playoffs. Let's play him. Let's do, air quote, the right thing by him.
But if we don't make the playoffs, then we publicly scrutinize him.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's a weird situation because, I mean, I know Sean Payton's frustrating. I know it's a frustrating situation. He hasn't been used to this game. Like, I don't know, when he went to the Saints, did he, like, they weren't contenders as soon as he went. It took a while. It took a few years. But
I just can't expect in today's day and age. I mean, when you're hired as a head coach in the NFL, they expect you to win now.
Yeah, that's where I was going with this, was that we're just in a what have you done lately situation. Give them some time. It's his first season.
Mm-hmm.
I understand from the standpoint of, hey, we're going to pay him a lot of money to not play for us if he has a debilitating injury, a horrific injury or something while we're playing for nothing. But that doesn't mean you can't just bench him for now.
Yeah.
And just say, hey, this is what it is. We're all, we're going forward next year. Let's just, because by next year, if he's your guy, you put him right in the position of this year. You're paying $39 million next year, no matter what. If he gets hurt next year, you're just paying him for the very next year. His injury contract,
prolonging that.
So, I mean, it's clear that he's not their guy. They have no reason to move forward with him now. I mean, and unfortunately, they found out after winning 4 or 5 games, and now you're kind of in the middle of the pack in the draft. But Sean Payton clearly wants to start over with his own guy.
Yeah, I kind of thought that Russell Wilson might be his guy. That working with a small quarter. I mean, he's a very similar play style to Drew Brees.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought he would know how to game plan with a quarterback like that, but we don't know what Russell Wilson's like in the locker room. We don't know what he's like. He has an ego. I know that as soon as Sean Payton showed up, Russell Wilson had his own parking spot. Sean Payton said, "No, we don't do that." And
when you see him show up to training camp last year, the way he did, but I mean, I don't let ego get in the way. Lots of times, people are just flashy. Sometimes, I know people like to make fun of Russell Wilson for being really cheesy and corny, and I remember, I think it was before a Monday Night Football game, but he's out there warming up on the field and, just practicing different scenarios. And they were making fun of him for sitting in the huddle and practicing speeches and things like that, which I get. I mean, it may be a little over the top, but at the same time, it could be, hey, there's cameras on me. I'm going to put out this persona that I'm this guy. He calls himself Mr. Unlimited. There's a lot to that. I understand because Drew Brees is not that guy. Sean Payton coaching the Saints, there was never, at least...
Sean Payton's not that guy either. He's more of that Bill Belichick style.
Yeah.
He's all about the game, all about football, and not about the other things.
Yeah. So, potential landing spots for Russell Wilson, because I don't think he's done. We like to talk, like, there's got to be... there's not 30 quarterbacks or 32 quarterbacks better than, Cam Newton we talked about or whoever. There's not 32. I mean, in this league, there's not 32 quarterbacks better than Russell Wilson. And we just talked about it, turning over really quick, not giving them a chance. There's a lot said about the middle class of the NFL quarterback these days because there's not really one. It's just a spattering of a few quarterbacks, and then the bottom half of the league is just right now seems awful. And maybe it has to do with just not giving guys enough time to develop. But right now, I would have Russell Wilson. I think a good fit might be Washington.
So that's the first team that was on the top of my head as soon as...
Yeah, and there's a lot of... I mean, they'll have a new coach next year. They might have a new team name next year. But they seem like... similar to the Broncos, where their roster's okay, they just have no quarterback. And Sam Howell has put up some stats in some games, but he's not. I don't see him being.
I mean, he didn't play this past week. They have Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah,
came in and actually played pretty well. Looked pretty good.
It just depends what they're. Who knows with that organization if they just want to draft a quarterback at this point. Because I don't think Russell Wilson makes them favorites in the NFC East. I don't think you can think they can make a Super Bowl run, but he might be step one. It depends.
I think he's also,
if they go out and get go out and get a really good head coach. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think he's also a very viable second option. You can see a team like the Jets.
Yeah,
might be a team that I know they have a veteran quarterback there, but do you really trust Zach Wilson at this point? I don't know if they go out and draft a guy. I don't think so. But really, that is kind of the missing piece they have. They have a very talented roster. We talked about this early in the season before everything went to shit for them. They have a very talented roster. They were missing that quarterback piece. Aaron Rodgers goes down. They had nothing else. So do they take a chance at? Does someone take a chance at bringing Russ Wilson in? It's probably going to cost you.
It might make. I don't know if it costs as much as you think because he's getting
expensive backup though.
But he would be an expensive backup. But I don't think it's going to cost as much as you think because he's still getting $39 million I mean, I know they're on the hook for 39. I don't know if he's getting paid 39.
Are the Raiders really solidified in their
But
quarterback?
is there a solidified team that doesn't have a quarterback that wants to risk that?
The Raiders don't have a quarterback. They have the quarterback that they have now, but they had Jimmy Garoppolo
The Saints?
at one point.
The Buccaneers, if they don't, I mean, Baker Mayfield's playing really good. I mean, you're name an NFC South team.
I mean,
outside,
I would say
guess Carolina. If you're
possibly the lowest, the bottom team in every division.
but is Russell Wilson going to go for those teams? I think he
the
went
Browns?
to Denver, knowing. I mean,
Because they have Flacco, but how long is Flacco going to play?
and you have Deshaun Watson
Yeah, I mean,
though, under contract.
Oh, yeah.
In Cleveland.
He
I
got
don't-
hurt. He had to get surgery.
Contracts
Forgot
are
about
weird.
that.
You really have to read between the lines now with contracts. That
I mean,
just because they signed a
similar-
6-year contract, that doesn't, like Daniel Jones signed a 4-year, $40-something million contract, but the Giants can move on from him next year if they
Russell
want.
Wilson 2
Russell
years
Wilson
ago
had
signed
like
a
a
5-year, $242 million contract, and they're ready to walk from him.
Yeah, so really, it's hard to tell. I think Russell Wilson, unless nobody wants to give him a contract, nobody wants to sign him outside of those lower tier teams. I think he might have a come to Jesus moment then. But you got to think there's a similar team where they're not terrible, like a Jets going and getting
I mean, are
Aaron
the
Rodgers.
Patriots, is Belichick out, and I don't think the Patriots are sold on Mac Jones.
There's no way
There's no way they're playing Bailey Zappi.
But you have to find that right.
I think a team like that could, or a Green Bay, bring in him as a backup. He's a solid guy, more of a teacher, mentor. I think any of the teams with these young, less than 5-year quarterbacks, he could be a viable fit as a backup just to extend his career. I mean, I would be hard pressed to see him out of the league. I mean, I know it's weird with, you said his name earlier, and I'm drawing a blank. Carolina's.
Bryce Young.
No, why am I drawing a blank? Their previous quarterback.
Oh, Cam Newton.
Cam Newton, sorry. Cam Newton. I mean,
He's been out of the league too long. It makes sense.
Now, yes, but why couldn't he find a landing spot? I mean, he was for sure. I mean, he was, to me, one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league when he was still able to play. And he goes to
is
it his play style?
I think it was more that he could throw the ball because he was a runner. And when you kind of took, not that it was completely taken away, he still ran a little bit in New England, but he dealt with so much injury because you talk about outside of Cam Newton and Michael Vick, and right now you're looking at with Jalen Hurts injury issues or just being beat up too much because you're a running quarterback. That's not sustainable. Cam Newton may have sustained it the best, but when you're not a big threat to run,
you see that with Josh Allen now. I mean,
Yeah.
How much longer can he lower his shoulder?
but Cam
try to
Newton,
run guys over?
Cam Newton was probably like at best middle of the road thrower. He could make throws. I mean, you're an NFL quarterback, but when you're forcing him to be a pocket quarterback most of the time, I think that's really what Cam Newton's downfall is. Now, Russell Wilson doesn't seem to be like that. Who knows? You put him in a different system. But check out this. This might be a pretty good fit. I don't know the contract situation with their current quarterback, but it kind of transitions into our next topic. What do you think about the Detroit Lions? A good team on paper. Goff's not the reason they're where they are. He's helping them out for sure, but he's not like carrying that team.
Yeah,
like
I don't know
Goff
Goff's situation contract wise.
System quarterback.
just
He
gonna
kind
say
of
that.
works with
So-
the system.
So wouldn't that be a better reason to bring Russell Wilson in? Again, I don't know their cap situation.
I don't think Dan Campbell's. I think he's more of this system guy that he would rather have than bringing in a more talented guy, because just more talent doesn't always equate to, hey, we're going to
No.
be better.
Of course not. I think Russell Wilson's miles better than he's been in Denver.
I mean, we see that here, and I don't want to change topics at all, but just a quick is Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott isn't great, but he works in this system, and you almost don't want to make a change because he does work with this team and this. That I think that's how Jared Goff is. I mean, he found a system that he worked in. He never meshed at any point on the Rams.
Yeah.
So he's only really had success here.
in that system.
And the same with Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford didn't work in Detroit.
Yeah.
But he goes to LA and things start to kind of click.
I'm hard pressed to say Russell Wilson is a system quarterback at all, but the system he was in worked for him, where he, I'm gonna say, had a say, but was very high up on the totem pole.
But I would also say that
we saw in Seattle that it was almost Pete Carroll or Russell Wilson, and Pete Carroll ended up winning that. But in Denver, you don't hear Russell Wilson or Sean Payton. It's Sean Payton or nothing. And in that situation where you saw the dysfunction, you saw how Sean Payton was talking and treating towards Russell Wilson, maybe that's just a situation where he's like, screw you, man. I don't know. But you see 100% that some guys just can't play for some coaches. And that's not necessarily wrong. I mean, you're not going to say, well, Sean Payton needs to change. He has a Super Bowl. He's a great coach. You just need the right quarterback for him. And the same with Russell Wilson. Just because you're not, I mean, you're a superstar quarterback, probably Hall of Famer. That doesn't, just because you're not a system quarterback doesn't mean there's not systems that don't work for you. And I think that's what we saw. I think he's potentially at his best, everything going right, a top 10 quarterback, but I think he's closer to the middle of the road. And just in Denver, and we saw little spurts of it this year. Denver had a pretty good run.
Games.
And I think you have to be real about his stature. Like, he can't just drop back in the pocket and throw over a line that's a foot taller. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
he
just
can't
the
run
realization.
like he used to.
That's the realization. The pocket has to move for him.
Yeah.
He has to gain these visuals. I mean, even guys that we see, sometimes you'll get these camera angles. A guy that's 6'4", I mean, he's just seeing over the line enough, and linebackers and all this depth. I mean, Russell Wilson doesn't, and I don't know what the Broncos have done this year to play around that. I would assume Sean Payton is good with that. He did the same thing with Drew Brees, like we mentioned. Seattle, they always did it. His pocket was always moving. He was always moving. He very rarely just dropped back and passed.
Yeah.
Unless maybe it was out to the flats, but I think that's where it would change is if he went to Detroit. They have a 6'4", 6'5" guy. They've got a guy that can just drop back, hit his targets. Russell Wilson can't do that. Their scheme would have to change, which doesn't just change, my quarterback's moving, my pocket's moving, my pass protections change, my route running, my route trees are different for this guy. Because if he's rolling out one direction, I can't. I'm not running my routes the other way. Yeah, he's not throwing back across the field.
Yeah, and
So
Sean,
changes so much of it. I think that, and maybe Denver thought this as we bring Sean Payton in because he's worked with these sub 6 foot quarterbacks. Maybe he's 6 foot, but he's worked with these guys. He would know how to game plan. I mean, maybe Russell Wilson has just lost that much, and we aren't seeing it.
Yeah, and Sean Payton from New Orleans builds his own teams. And maybe there's not that big of an issue with Russell Wilson as he knows it's not going to work. He doesn't want Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson has a big contract, so let's make it as dysfunctional as possible. I'm not, I don't know.
Could Arizona be a good landing spot?
Yeah, because, I mean
that's a team that
Kyler
just
Murray,
lost
again,
they just lost their
just
coach,
signed a big
right?
contract. Yeah, Kyler Murray just signed a big contract, but I don't know the details of that. They could be done with that in 2 years. I'm not sure. But to say, you may say, hey, we can get out of it quicker, but you can still have a big brunt of that. You add whatever you can get Russell Wilson for. I don't know. He's going to get some money from Denver next year regardless.
And I think arguably you could fit Russell Wilson into a lot of systems in some capacity, whether it's a backup or starting role.
Russell Wilson's play type where he can run, that's kind of the modern quarterback.
Yeah.
I think you'd be hard-pressed to fit any quarterback that can't run. Just like Dak Prescott. He runs a lot less than he used to. Actually, this year's picked it up a little bit and runs a little bit more. But I think he has a similar running style to Russell Wilson where they're not really all that fast. You almost forget that they're a running threat sometimes, but they're both bigger quarterback. Not height, obviously Dak Prescott's taller, but as a quarterback, he's got a pretty big stat. Like, look at Daniel Jones, is pretty skinny looking, on TV. But he's a skinnier quarterback than Russell Wilson is, where Russell Wilson can barrel over some guys.
Russell Wilson's very much like you mentioned Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Very similar play style as well. But do you go? I mean, Baker is slightly younger. I mean, he's hot. Do you keep the hot hand? I mean, I don't know if I would make that trade if I have Baker Mayfield playing the way he is in Tampa with that roster. Mind you, I mean, he's not playing with an all-star team. I don't think I make that trade. I wouldn't swap a Baker Mayfield for Russell Wilson because you don't know what you're getting if Baker Mayfield's hot.
Yeah. If you're gonna get
not
a
an
hit or
official
miss
trade,
quarterback,
obviously.
No. I'm saying,
no.
like,
I know what you mean, but
I don't. I think there's a lot of places he could go. I would say, top places like New England, really, Washington, where it's just so dysfunctional. It's about to all blow up, anyways.
Yeah,
like I think those are the landing spots. I don't know if he wants that.
well, best case.
I mean, could he just say, "Screw it, I'm going to play baseball"? I mean, I don't know who has his contract currently. If I were him, that's what I would do.
Best case, you're looking at maybe 5 years left of his career. Like if you're a team that's not ready to win the Super Bowl now and you just don't have a quarterback, which it's hard to tell sometimes. You take a Super Bowl caliber team, take away their quarterback, they may look like an 8-9 team or something like that. But if you're a team, you could just say, hey, we have a 5-year window. Let's bring him in here, see if it works out, see if he can stay healthy, see if the scheme can work. I can't say you would have longer than that. I don't even think you would get 5 years out of him, honestly.
I think
top level, maybe 1 or 2.
What's changed with this win now mentality and what are you doing for me now is how many rookie quarterbacks do we have playing this year? I mean, you had Tennessee with Will Levis, Houston at times when he can stay healthy, Carolina. I mean,
some
of the landing spots.
It may be a better question. How many are on rookie contracts? Because you can even throw New England in there.
Yeah,
I think it's most where you're not going to
bring, but you're not going to bring Russell Wilson into a system with Houston. Most likely, you're pretty much set there. Probably not Tennessee unless he did come into a backup role. I don't think they're going to try to go away from Will Levis.
I think one might be because we kind of threw it away. Carolina because he was the number 1 overall pick or whatever, but you see how bad that's gone. Not okay, it's not working after 1 year, but bring him in as like what they did with Patrick Mahomes. Let him sit a year.
Yeah.
Not that Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have been Patrick Mahomes, but he's even said in interviews the benefit of sitting behind Alex Smith and smaller quarterback, shorter quarterback that can run a little bit. Not a huge running threat, but can run. That sounds like Russell Wilson to me. So maybe if Russell Wilson's interested in going to the worst team, because you're not drafting another quarterback. Is it Houston? Houston has your pick, and Carolina. So you're potentially the number 1 overall pick, and you don't even have your pick.
Yeah.
So I think that's an outside choice that I don't know how Bryce Young would feel about that. But I think it's more likely to put him in a situation where it's a decent team, possibly already has a young quarterback. Let him play for a year or two, because the downside of that is, hey, Russell Wilson's your quarterback for the next 3 years, and Bryce Young gets pissed off, or your younger quarterback's pissed off.
I mean, really, if you look at the whole NFL, Denver's a good place for Russell Wilson. Now, maybe if they're wanting to draft somebody and have him in a backup role, I think that, everything we're talking about is, make him a backup, make him this. That's Denver. He fits into that system now. It's just, I think it's
but does Russell Wilson want to be a backup,
there's
though?
so much bad blood now. There's no way that works out. There's no way that he's there after the season.
I think Russell Wilson is a system quarterback now. I think he's too old to make his own system, but he doesn't want to be a system quarterback where he builds around the system. He wants a system built around him. like a Patrick Mahomes. Like Patrick Mahomes goes to any team, they're building a team and a system around him.
Well, when you have 10 years left in your career, sure.
But with if Dak went to a different team, they're not going to build this super team and scheme around Dak. Dak's going to have to adjust to this scheme. I think that's what Russell Wilson kind of wants them to build the scheme around him, but Denver really needed him to adapt to a different scheme together.
Yeah, I guess we've never seen them build around an old quarterback before. They just did it with Aaron Rodgers. They didn't necessarily they traded away assets to get him, but they didn't necessarily bring. I mean, they just signed other veterans that Aaron Rodgers wanted. I guess you could do that, but Russell Wilson hasn't been proven the last few years. Even his last couple of years in Seattle, that's kind of like that's kind of why we were surprised when Denver gave up so much to get him. There were questions when he left Seattle, and then obviously his first year in Denver, and then this year. But I think I don't know that he'd be a backup though. Like he would agree to be a backup. Maybe if he looks. Because he wasn't in free agency, he got traded to Denver. Now he may have looked at it and said, "These are the teams I'll agree to be traded to." But maybe they let him go. He runs in free agency, and it just doesn't look that great. Maybe he does get in a situation where he tries to prove himself. I don't know. But sticking with NFL, we do have one game today, prime time Saturday night. Lions at Cowboys. A lot of playoff implications. Both teams have already clinched their spot in the playoffs. Detroit winning the NFC North for the first time in over 30 years. Dallas still has an outside chance to win the NFC East. Both teams have a shot to get the number 1 overall seed, although very unlikely. Jimmy Johnson's getting into the Ring of Honor at halftime. What are we looking at from this game? I know Cowboys trying to get back on track. Although if they win, it's not necessarily rainbows and roses or flowers and rainbows, whatever the term might be. But because the Cowboys have trouble winning on the road, you expect them to win today.
Yeah. Cowboys are undefeated at home still. The Lions are undefeated in prime time.
Lions are 6-2 on the road. They're a very good road team.
One has to change here.
Yeah.
I think that this is going to be the Cowboys have to build some momentum going in. The past 2 weeks have not been what you want to be playing in December.
Yeah.
They have to build. They have to finish December strong, which it's so weird. It doesn't matter what the roster looks like. This team has not been a good team in December.
In December or on the road the last couple of years.
So they have to make a change. They have to find something to build some momentum going into the playoffs.
What's the bracket? I think the bracket right now would have us playing Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
In the first round. That is the best case
I don't
scenario.
know. I don't know the percentage, but that's like 80-something%. Because Cowboys could, just by percentage chances and what's possible, they could be the 1 seed through the 5 seed. I think they've already, if you're going to be the wild card team, I think the worst you could do is the 5 seed and go to Tampa and or Atlanta or New Orleans. I don't know if Atlanta and New Orleans, their chances of
the
passing
only
up Tampa.
Bad part about that is you don't get a home game.
Unless in the second round they reseed it. So right now San Francisco has overall number 1 seed and a bye. So after the first round, the lowest seed would go play San Francisco, and then the other 2 teams would play. There's a scenario if the Lions, assuming the Lions already won their division, let's assume Philadelphia gets the number 2 seed and wins the division, where it's San Francisco, Philadelphia, Detroit, Tampa, Dallas, and then fill out your other 2. If Philadelphia and Detroit get upset, meaning all 3 road teams win, then the Cowboys would have a game against whoever the lowest seed. They would have a home game. Yeah, they would. That's the only scenario. But more than likely, I mean, the only part about not only not having the home game is you're probably going to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Which, if you're going to make a Super Bowl run, you probably have to beat San Francisco in San Francisco one way or the other. But you might want to have some momentum, maybe meet them in the NFC Championship game, or even have a shot at another team picking them off.
Yeah.
But again, that would, as of now, would be Los Angeles, the Rams, or who else is Seattle. But, I mean, if you want to be positive about it, of the current playoff teams, you've beat 3 of them. Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and Seattle. I think the Cowboys have a lot more to lose in this game than Detroit. Maybe, I mean, Detroit's already, they're more than likely the 3 seed no matter what.
I think if they...
the 3 seed.
I think if Detroit wins, Seattle loses, San Fran loses, Detroit can jump to 1.
Yeah, they have the the possibility. But I think you outside of the Rams and Seattle, that might get jumbled up. I think you see the current what the playoffs are going to be. You're seeing what it is right now.
I think for the Cowboys, the division, you need to throw that out the window. If you get it, it's by chance. You really can't control
Eagles would
that
have
anymore.
to lose to the Cardinals and the Giants.
Yeah, you can't control that anymore. You have to focus on internally. What can we do to get hot again and start to repair some of these issues that we have within our offense? And and quite honestly, the defense hasn't played great on the road.
The defense wasn't great last week.
No,
The offense
or the week before.
The offensive
well, the defense was
line-
okay. They held Miami in check
Yeah.
for 3/4. I think they were pretty good.
The offensive line last week was
which has been the
it was
Achilles
You
heel.
didn't have Tyron Smith,
terrible.
and Zach Martin was coming off an injury.
Yeah.
To be fair, not making excuses or
I
whatever.
mean, that's been the Achilles heel. If the offensive line isn't healthy,
You lose in Arizona, you were missing 3 starting offenses.
Yeah.
We're just throwing that out there. They do obviously
It's-
do have an issue. If you think I'm trying to be, glass half full, go watch the sports page that I did. I trashed the Cowboys for the most part, wondering what their issues are. But I think if you lose today, you're just like, okay, we're just barely. We're just trying to see what we can do in the playoffs. There's no confidence to do anything in the playoffs
at
if you
that
lose
point,
today.
then they show you that they truly are just a wild card team.
Yeah.
Yes, they are a playoff team, but they're a wild card team. They're not a division competitor. Yes, they beat the Eagles, but anybody can win on any day.
Yeah, I think
that just because you beat the Eagles doesn't mean that they're the top team. And the Eagles are kind of reeling too. They're struggling right now.
They didn't even play well against the Giants at home last week. But yeah, you're fully prepared to go to Tampa, New Orleans, Atlanta, whoever it ends up being. But you got to win today. Get back on the track. Prove, hey, we're a great home team. We're a great team. Not that Detroit's an easy team to beat. And then you have a road. I think it's good that you have a road game next week against Washington. That's not a given either. Washington's a scrappy team. But that's an opportunity to maybe beat up on them a little bit, get some more confidence on the road, and then the next week go on the road to probably Tampa Bay.
I think that's a team I don't think the Cowboys need to take lightly, the Commanders. I don't think they need to plan on resting guys to start the game. I think you need to get up, make sure your offense is clicking, and then if you want to start pulling some guys out and making some moves. But I don't think you sit a lot of guys going into Washington just because you're going to the playoffs. I think at that point you need the momentum more and make sure you're clicking more so than resting guys for that.
I have no confidence that the Eagles are going to give away this division, but I would like them to lose this week. So that's still in the Cowboys' mind that they can possibly, if they win this tonight and the Eagles lose tomorrow, that you're hoping for some things to happen which again, the Eagles may play before the Cowboys against Washington next week. I'm not sure, but I agree. I think you need to get some momentum going. Really, it's just the Buffalo game that has you freaking out because Miami was a pretty good game. It was on the road. They don't play well on grass. Defense played well most of the game. Offense, not really. A couple of drives were good. You had a turnover in the red zone, but
Buffalo's a better team.
Yeah, if you're not going to
get credit for, if you look at Buffalo, every game they played this season, it's either a blowout or they lose by a very close margin. They were never blown out this season.
And Josh Allen there was not a lot of turnovers from Josh Allen.
If you don't get blown out against Buffalo and give up 240 rushing yards, I think you're looking at it different. You're probably still like, yeah, they just can't win on the road. But if you lose by like a touchdown against Buffalo, who I think the Cowboys were probably favored by like a point on the road in that game, but you play Buffalo and Miami close on the road and still lose, you're like, you have some things to clean up. But I think when you lose to Miami, I mean, you had the lead with 3 minutes left on the road. And your defense had played well that whole game. You like your position. Like if you tell me they're going to be up by, were they up by 1 point? Probably, yeah, 1 point late in the game. I'll take that every time. But getting blown out by Buffalo, all those questions, can they win on the road? Can they beat a good team? Because they've only, I don't know why they changed the statistic where I think they did it to where they said this is the first time two teams met with 20 plus wins, but they only have one win against a winning team or whatever. But that wasn't true when they kicked off because you had Seattle and Los Angeles had winning records at that point. But they had already said that the statistics, so they said since past week 15, which was weird that you're already past that, but whatever. But the thing with, can they win on the road? Can they beat a playoff team? Can they beat a team with a winning record? And you get blown out by Buffalo, and that all goes out the wayside. Then you lose to Miami, you're like, crap, the sky's falling. And really, you're allowed to have a bad game.
For a team like this, that's where the problem lies, is you tout this as we have the best defense. We have a really hot offense. We have this. We have arguably the best receiving core in football. Like, they're not living up to the hype, and that's where the trouble lies. Like,
and all their wins are coming at home. Take one other game. Say, keep the same record. Say they win this game on the road, and they lost a different game at home. I think it's a little different too. I think you might feel better about it because you're more than likely not going to have a home game in the playoffs. But look, Philadelphia got blown out by San Francisco at home. San Francisco had a 3-game losing streak. Philadelphia had a 3-game losing streak. Take that one game out of it. Take that one Buffalo game out of it, and Arizona. You had two really bad games. Outside of that, or San Francisco too, but San Francisco's a good team, and it was on the road. But take out of those out of it, where you had a good game against Miami. You've beaten the Rams and Seattle, who are playoff teams, one way or the other. I mean, you beat Philadelphia. You almost beat Philadelphia on the road. Take out a fourth down tackle at the goal line, and Dak stepping out of bounds on a 2-point conversion. These get where if one of those games changes around, if you go to Arizona and have all of your starting offensive linemen, right now you're tied for the division.
Yeah.
Or winning the division if one of those wins is Philadelphia. So it's not all doom and gloom. You just have to figure out how to win on the road, which the scary thing is, and the frustrating thing is, even for the Cowboys, they had a defensive players only private meeting to figure out what the heck's going on. And they didn't come out with an answer, which is frustrating when you don't know why. It'd be easy if you said, well, this is why we struggle and we can fix it. But, they're a good team, and they have no idea why they're a different team on the road, on grass, whatever you want to say. But they're still a team that's won 10 games.
The positive side would be once you get into the playoffs, it's a whole new season.
Yeah.
I mean, think back to the 2008 New York Giants, a 10-6 team. They end up knocking off an undefeated Patriots team in the Super Bowl from being a 10-6 team. It's possible. It is possible. The
Giants beat the Cowboys, who had the number 1 seed, or had a bye week. Back then you had 2 bye weeks. I don't remember if they're number 1. But the Cowboys had beat the Giants twice that year.
Yeah.
The Giants go on the road and beat the Cowboys.
So really, when you come down to those one-win situations, I think it's really going to come down to is not do we trust the team, but do we trust the play calling?
Yeah.
That's what's going to be the deciding factor when you get into these one-win, must-win situations. Do we trust the play calls that we have? Because up to this point, I'm not 100% sold on the new offense and everything that they're doing. Yes, we've had some success with it, but I'm not 100% sold that this is the answer for this team.
And if you want to stick with Cowboys history, as you're talking about, there's a different team in December. They're always, even the games they lose in the playoffs, if you want to be a glass half full guy, since whatever year it was when they I think 2009, 2010, they got blown out by Minnesota on the road. Since then, both San Francisco losses, both Green Bay losses, loss against the Rams. There's one more in there. They've all been one possession games. As much as you thought we got our asses kicked twice in the playoffs against 49ers, 7-point loss and an 8-point loss. You play terribly in those games, but that makes me feel better. It's like, hey, you played terrible and you almost won that game. Against Green Bay twice, Dez caught it, and then Dak Prescott's rookie season. Packers win by a field goal, and obviously you lose when Dez does not catch it, which you were going to take the lead anyways. One play is all it takes to change any of those games. Now, if you're saying they go to the playoffs every year, they get their ass kicked. If you have a losing streak like Detroit, which should end this year, they have not won a playoff game since 1991. And really, they have one in the Super Bowl era. They have one playoff win, which was in 1991. Those things would get to you, but I don't know. There's nothing. The Cowboys are always the same, but they're different. They have the same issues where they'll have really good seasons. They'll have questions, which I think most teams do. You just kind of focus on the Cowboys more than anything. They'll make the playoffs on a consistent basis and lose. And win, one on average every 4 or 5 years. But it's always different issues. And I think this year, because a lot of times it's the offense, it's turnover-prone quarterback, Romo, Dak, whoever. But you don't have that this year. Dak's playing MVP level. Even against Miami, he was pretty good. He didn't play well against Buffalo. And he's not going to win the MVP because even if you ball out these last 2 weeks, MVP is not going to be from a wild card team. It's going to be, quarterback of one of the top 2 seeds. Probably Lamar Jackson at this point. But glass half full optimist, the Cowboys obviously need to take care of business today. It's probably going to be a game similar to Seattle where it's back and forth, but you win against a good team. And then they need to go get their confidence on the road against Washington. Because I don't think winning this game really helps your confidence as a Cowboys fan, because
statistically they should win the game.
They should win. It's an inferior team, if you want to say it, because they're favored, and you're at home, and everything you said, your home team on turf, all that you should go beat this team. It would be a lot worse for the Cowboys if they lost than the Lions. But you need to go and have a really good game on the road in Washington to get kind of momentum and say, hey, if it's a mental thing, I don't know if it's just kind of in your head. We can't win on the road. You go beat I know it's Washington, but you have a solid game. You're like, hey, we played good on the road regardless. And you don't have that as much sticking in your head as you have been the last few weeks. But guys, thanks for tuning in to this edition of the Leadoff. Hope everybody had a great Christmas, and we hope everybody has a happy New Year, safe New Year. And we'll be back 2024 talking more sports to get you ready for your future weekends with Tony and Landen. I'm Ashton. See you guys later.